Hi, everyone. Welcome. We're going to get started in about 3 minutes. But if you want to go ahead in the chat, set your comments to everyone and tell us where are you in the world and what is your current role in education? Awesome. I love to see these locations and current roles pouring into the chats. If you just joined us, we're going to get started in about 1 minute, but feel free to tell us in the chat, where are you in the world and what is your current role in education before we get started? All right, so before we get started, I just wanted to let you know that you are welcome to leave questions throughout the webinar, either in the chat window or you can utilize the Q&A feature. So feel free to do whatever you feel most comfortable with. We will also have time for questions at the end. And while we have some more people join us, I'm going to give you a little activity to get started with before I introduce myself and before I introduce our webinar for this evening. So if you want to open a separate window or tab, go to student.desmos.com and enter the code that you see on the screen right now, 2TKSJR. We're going to be toggling back and forth between this Desmos activity and our Zoom screen for a little bit. If you don't have a Desmos account, feel free to create a free one. And then there's 3 screens for you to work through before we begin. So I can already see, awesome. There's already 5 people who have made it into the activity. So great job. We have about 50 plus people in the webinar this evening. So let's give everybody a couple minutes to get into the activity and work through those first few screens. Lots of great responses coming into the activity so far. We have a lot of people logged in, so that is wonderful. If you have just joined us, because several others have just come in the past minute or so, there is a code on my screen that you're going to want to open a new window or tab. Go to student.desmos.com and type in this code that you see on the Zoom screen right now, 2TKSJR. And if you are already in that third screen of the activity, just hang out there for another moment and we will get started. All right, hello everyone. My name is Heather Russo. I am a math supervisor for grades 6 to 12 for a public school in central Massachusetts. And I also am a Desmos certified presenter. And I'm so happy to get a chance to talk to you today to learn a little bit more about the Desmos activities and how you can start using them in your classroom. I also want to let you know that one of my colleagues is here with me this evening. Matt is going to be manning the chat window and the Q&A feature. So if you have any questions throughout the webinar, please feel free to write them in the chat and or write them right in that Q&A feature so he can help answer those for you. If you need any links at any time, he can also help post those for you. We are going to reserve the last 10 minutes of the webinar for specifically dedicated to questions as well. So if we don't get a chance to answer your question within the activity itself, then hold on to that and make sure you ask us again at the end in case we miss it. We are going to be working through a Desmos activity this evening. So you are going to be switching back and forth between the Zoom screen and the Desmos activity. I'll try to give you a little heads up about when to make that switch as we go. So before we dive into our agenda, I just want to show you a little bit about who's in our room tonight. And let's see what we have going on here. So we asked you, how are you feeling today? So you can see on our robot scale, we have that wide spectrum of how we're feeling, but we're all here, lots of great comments, a lot of we're doing well, but we're tired. For some of us, it could be the beginning of the day. Some of us, it's the end of a long school day potentially. So I really do thank you for taking the time out of your day to be here with us. You can also see where are we located. I love when people add, we just have our United States map here, but we definitely have some that are off of this map. So thank you for sharing that and thank you for joining us. And then we also have a wide familiarity with Desmos, okay? And so we have some people that are not quite sure what Desmos is, or maybe they've only used the calculators, and others have started to use activities with their students. So my hope is that when you leave here today, you will feel very confident in choosing a Desmos activity to use with your students, and not only just implementing it, but really utilizing some of those classroom conversation tools to really enhance conversations within your classroom. Here's a little bit more information about who we are and what we offer as a Desmos team. We truly believe that all students are brilliant, and it is our job as teachers to tap into that brilliance to help students learn math. We offer thousands of free classroom activities and in a free activity builder platform where teachers can edit and create their own activities. This is one of the reasons why I love sharing my love of Desmos. Before I got into my supervisor role, I was mainly an Algebra 1 teacher for about 9 years, and I loved seeing how Desmos helped my students light up and learn math. And so now we get to share that with so many teachers. The calculators are also becoming more and more common as they're being built into the majority of US state level assessments and some digital college entrance exams. I also think it's important to note that our company is guided by specific equity principles and pedagogical philosophy. And I invite you to learn more about that on our website. There's a whole blog post that explains what our values are. So here's a look at what is on our agenda today, and then we're going to look at a few things that we are not going to have a chance to cover. So we are going to have a chance to experience a Desmos activity from the student lens, and then we're going to put our teacher hats on and look at it from the teacher lens and really examine that teacher dashboard. I'm going to show you how to find and assign activities, and then we'll leave you with some resources to continue your learning, and again, time for that Q&A. What we're not going to have a chance to talk about today is we're not going to specifically talk about how to use the graphing calculator or how to create your own activity. We're also not going to get into that computation layer, which is the programming that occurs behind the scenes in many Desmos activities. And we're not going to talk about updates to new Desmos features. There are often free webinars about these topics, so you can check out our professional learning page on our website if you're curious about learning about any of these. I want to share the code for our activity one more time. It looks like the majority of us are in, but we definitely have some more newcomers, so thank you for joining us. I want to give everybody a moment. You're going to get the most out of tonight's webinar if you're able to log into the activity. And Matt also just posted a direct link in the chat for you. So if you are not currently in the Desmos activity, you're going to want to open a new tab, and you can either follow the directions on the screen and go to student.desmos.com and type in the code, or you can click the link that he just posted in the chat. So what's going to happen for about the next 15 minutes or so, you're going to have a chance to experience an activity as a student and really explore what it is like to experience Desmos. I want to be clear, the activity that you're about to do was designed for adults in a professional learning experience. So it's not a full activity that you would do with students in your classroom, because we want you to get to experience a few of the different screen options that are within Desmos activities so that you can really get a good flavor of what's available out there. But what you're going to do are components of activities that do exist that you could use with your students. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and before I give you access to these screens, let me just show you what's going to happen on the first screen that you're going to look at. So the first little part, you're going to see an activity called Turtle Crossing. And you are going to be invited to explore how a graph affects our sketch here. Okay, so I invite you to sketch anything, okay, on our graph here, and then press play. I am not going to press play because I don't want to take that joy away from you. I want you to be able to draw something, press play, see what happens. And I really recommend, sketching something, watching what happens, then revising. You can, at the top here, you have options to undo, or you can erase what you've drawn before, or you can, if you want to clear the whole graph, just press the X. Simple. So I'm going to give you a couple minutes to play around with that and have a little bit of fun with it. So you can go ahead right now and you can go to your Desmos activity tab. So leave the Zoom for just a couple minutes and have some fun with the first screen of Turtle Crossing. There are a lot of fun sketches coming in, so keep playing around with that. Again, sketch something, watch, see what happens, go back, try something else. If you feel pretty good, if you want to come back and look at the Zoom and see what some of your fellow participants have done, you can come take a look at that. But I'm going to give you about another minute or so to play around with the sketch. All right, so on my screen, if you want to come back to the Zoom, I'm going to highlight just a few fun responses and unique responses that I can see. So I thought this one was fun. Valentine's Day in the US is just around the corner. Appears that my turtle, here we go. It's a little bit delayed. There's a lot of people in the activity right now, but you can see at a few points we have 2 turtles. Sometimes they are walking forward, sometimes backwards, but we can toggle between the various student responses and take a look at some of the different pathways. Let's go back. We'll look at everyone's as a whole. Let's see. Let's go back. Oh, someone drew a turtle. Let's take a look at that one. And we'll see what happens once they highlight and sketch. Let me try to replay that and see if we can get it to show up. There we go. My apologies, there does seem to be a bit of a delay. I'm not sure if it's due to my internet, but you can get the idea of some different sketches that we have going on here. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give you access to the next couple screens. They continue going with the turtle's journey. So when you look at screen 5, you are going to have a chance to look at a graph that Luca drew to represent a new turtle. And you're going to write a short story to tell us what does this graph tell us about the turtle's journey. So you can go ahead and move on to screen 5. And then when you are all set there, you'll also have access to screen 6, and so you can reveal the ultimate result of Luca's journey. So I'll give you a couple minutes to play around with that one. If you're on screen 4 still, you want to head over to screen 5 so you can take a look at Luca's journey. I'm going to pause you in about 20 seconds and invite you to come back to the Zoom screen. All right, pausing in 3, 2, 1. All right, so come on back to the Zoom screen and just take a moment. We asked you to tell a story about Luca's turtles graph. And so I just took about four different responses from the participants who are here today. And you can just take a moment and read a couple of the different journeys that people highlighted. A lot of the responses talked about the turtle having a start, but then needing to slow down or to rest. and maybe stop moving for a little bit. Some of the responses actually had some time increments, as you can see in a couple of these. Lots of varied responses, but you can get a flavor for the different types that you would see within this. So at this point, turtle crossing is a whole activity. You could do it for an entire class period. We're going to switch to a different activity within this one, just so that you can see and preview a different activity for students to develop an understanding of what scaled copies are and to describe characteristics of scaled copies using informal language. So I'm going to give you access to screen 7. This is one of my favorite activities. Love using this with students. It's called, the first is scaling machines. And so you're going to see an image on your screen, and you can go ahead and change it however you would like to. And when you are ready, then you're going to have, I'm going to add access to screen 8 and 9, and you can play around a little bit and see what happens. So I'm going to give you first just a minute or two to play around and make your shape, and then I'll let you know when I'm going to give you access to move next. So have a little fun with that and make your image, and then we will move on. My apologies, I just unpaused you. I think you should be all set now. There you go. And as you're working, if you are curious what this looks like from the teacher perspective, you can feel free to come pop over and look at my view, but we will get a chance to talk about and look at the teacher side of things in a little bit. So just have some fun for about another 20 seconds, and then I will give you access to the next couple screens. All right, when I give you access to screen 8, you'll notice that you have a printer and with some zoom options. So you can either choose to zoom in or out on your design, and you can press print and see what happens. So I'm going to give you access to that screen. And try it a couple times, try adjusting that zoom level. If you want to go back to screen 7 at any time and change your shape, you can do that. As a reminder, this is an abbreviated version of the actual activity, and there are more screens in that one to work through. But I think you can have a lot of fun with changing your shape and seeing what happens, and then giving me some ideas about what you think stays the same or what things that change. I'm going to be scrolling through some of the responses on the Zoom screen if you want to take a pause and look over here. But when you're ready, you can head over to screen 9 and let us know which of these are a scaled copy and which are not. And to talk a little bit about then what that means. We'll stay here for about another minute or so, answering screens 8 and 9. All right, I'm going to pause you in about 5 seconds. All right, 3, 2, 1. All right, I know some people are still working on their responses, but come on back to the Zoom. We have a lot to cover tonight, and I just want to make sure that you get to see all the facets. So we'll just end with a few of the responses here about what is a scaled copy, what makes it different than one that's not. And so here are a couple of responses, most talking about how they are the same shape, maybe same angles that we refer to, but that it just gets bigger or smaller. Maybe the size changes, but the shape itself does not. So you're gonna have one last activity within this activity, which is a card sort. All right, so you're going to start the cards based on whether or not they show scaled copies. One thing I just wanted to show you, if you've never done a card sort before, is that when you think 2 cards match, you want to make sure that you actually hover. So you can pick up a card, and when you think it has a match, you want to hover it over the other card that it matches to so that it lights up with that blue background, and then you can let it go. If you change your mind and you say, nope, those don't go together, then you can just click it and remove it away. And you can have as many cards go together as you see fit. So again, I'm going to give you edit. I'm going to move everybody to that last one so that you can all experience the joy of a card sort. And then we will come back together and examine the teacher dashboard. I'm going to unpause you this time, so you should be all set to play around with the card sort. Awesome. About 30 more seconds to play around with the card sort. All right, I'm not going to pause you this time because I do want you to have access to the whole activity. And I did remove the pacing so that you can go to any screen that you'd like. But I would recommend that you come back to the Zoom screen. We're going to finish up on the card sort and then dive into the dashboard itself. So I just wanted to show you one thing from the teacher lens. If you do a card sort that does have correct answers, then as the students are working, I can choose this button on the right-hand side here that says show correctness, and I can do a quick scan of the class and see how we are doing. So any of the gray cards that are kind of left that you see there just means they haven't been sorted yet. But the blue ones with the check marks means that they were correctly sorted, so I can check them with students. So that was a very brief intro to a few of the different components that make up some of the Desmos activities. We combined a couple of different activities so that you could see those different features, which I think makes it really exciting to see what possibilities are out there within the activities. So now I want to show you some of the teacher dashboard features so that you can feel confident to lead an activity in your class. And after this, I'll show you how to find the activities. So one thing I'm going to zoom in on that I think is the most important feature is the left-hand side here of the teacher dashboard. So as you can see, I have the name of my activity here on the left-hand side. I also have my code. So this is where I get the code for the activity, and I can project that during my class to my students. I can also copy that link. So what Matt has been pasting in the chat window, this comes from this link right here that you can access on the top left-hand side. Okay, and the first feature in the Classroom Conversation Toolkit is the Anonymize feature. So I'm going to go back to my summary tab so you can see everyone who's here today. You can see we have 85 students in the activity and they are anonymized. So I'm going to go ahead and uncheck that for just a brief moment. You can also see we have a purple bar across the screen that says anonymized mode is on. Your students' names have been changed to the names of notable mathematicians. Okay, so this is what the activity looks like at the beginning. This is some names of the people in the session, but I went ahead and anonymized that. And honestly, from the teacher perspective, I pretty much have this on 24/7 when I do activities with students. My thinking is that we don't really need to know who is saying what. We want to start with this equal ground. And a lot of the activities, again, we're exploring mathematical ideas and we're not sure about them yet. And so having it anonymized makes it a safer place for students to join into the conversation. Okay, we have gotten a few questions in the Q&A just about, does everyone see if it's anonymized, or how can the teacher tell who it is? Okay, so when I click that anonymize, yes, this appears anonymous to everyone in the activity, but you'll notice on my screen though, when I hover over the anonymized name, I can see who the real person is. So that helps me in a classroom figure out which is the student who said particular things. If you click the 3 dots, you can see an email address. You can also hide the student. Okay, so if your students were joining without logging in for some reason and you needed to remove someone, you can do that by clicking the 3 little dots right there. All of the names are notable mathematicians that have been selected with the intention to highlight diverse backgrounds. So that is the anonymize feature. The second button over is the pacing, and you saw me use that a couple times today. Okay, so it allows me to lead students through part of an activity. I can do one screen or multiple screens at a time, and that is to really make sure that we are sticking together as a class. I don't really want to, this was a 10-screen activity, and I hope you notice, I didn't just say, here's 10 screens, go work through all of them and we'll chat afterwards. We pace each other so that we can have these conversations, we can pause, and we can come back together and talk about these mathematical ideas. So if you want to pace the class, you're going to start by clicking pacing. It is that middle circle, okay? And then it says select a screen to start pacing your class. So when you all joined today, I had you pace from screens 1 to 3. So I'm gonna go ahead, and again, I clicked pacing. I clicked screen 1 to start, then I clicked screen 3 to end, and I'm gonna say restrict to screens 1 to 3. So that means you all probably just went somewhere else within the activity that you might not have wanted to go, which is okay. But this keeps us all together as a class. With that pacing, those are my warm-up questions. So when I have time to begin the lesson with screen 4 of the turtle crossing, I don't really just want to add on, because if a student comes in late, then they would potentially start at screen 1. And if someone comes in late, I don't really need them to answer the warm-up questions necessarily. So I'm going to edit my pacing, and I now will just click screen 4. If you want a couple screens, like let's pretend I wanted 4 and 5, I just say edit, and then restrict to 4 and 5. Now I was here and I did decide, oh, I wanted you to be able to reveal the answer to Luca's graph. So I can just click the plus sign. Okay, so that's another option if you don't want to change the pacing entirely. Maybe I want to jump ahead though, and I want to send you all to screen 10. Okay, I can just, again, I can say edit. I'll choose my new screen and say restrict to screen 10. We're all going to chat about that screen, and I don't want you to go back and forth. If at the end of a class or end of an activity, I decide that the pacing is over, I can just stop that and press stop, and now you can go anywhere within the activity. Okay, I can see how many students are on each screen by looking across the top of the little icons. There's that little blue rectangle, and it shows me like one person is on screen 3, 3 people are on screen 4, and so on. You can see the majority of the participants are on screen 10. There are 60 of you there now. Okay, so that is the pacing feature. I absolutely love it. It can keep us together. It can really help prevent the high flyers who are moving really quickly ahead, and can just help us keep those conversations together. Okay, and the third and final feature within that particular conversation toolkit is the pause feature. So as you experienced, a few of you told me in the chat, I forgot to unpause you. That 100% is going to happen sometime when you use this with students, and they will be sure to remind you you've left this pause, and that is okay. But when you're using it, again, the idea is to get the class to come back together. I love it. It's like pausing the game or something that they're playing with. I don't know if anyone ever has told kids to Pac-Man your laptop or Chromebook, to kind of close the laptop lid so that now bring your eyes up here, take a look at me. And this allows you to do that without having them to close their devices. So when I click that pause, their screen has a gray gray box that comes over it, and they can't access the activity anymore. Okay. And so I try to give a warning, a soft warning, just so that, you know, people are in the middle of writing things or finishing something up. Occasionally you'll get a class groan of they don't want you to pause it on them. Kind of like the English teacher pausing a movie in the middle of a lesson, but sometimes it is really important that we come back together and discuss these ideas. Okay, so that is the pause feature. On this dashboard screen, we have a variety of symbols that you can see across here. So let's just briefly look at what they are. There are a few that might not be available in this activity, but we do have almost all of them here. So you'll notice that on screen 6, you see some dashes across my student names. Okay, so the dash means it isn't possible for students to do work on this screen. This was just a screen for you to press play and watch. So a dash means there's no work to do. It's usually just something to read or to watch. Okay, on a few of our screens, not a lot, but on a couple, you can see on screen 7 and on screen 10, there are check marks. Okay, that means that everything on that screen is correct. Okay. If you had a cross, then that would mean that something on that screen is incorrect. Doesn't mean everything is, but something is. You might get a warning symbol. I don't think we have anyone, no one got a warning within this activity today. You can see we had a couple X's over here. So there are no warnings, but that if you ever get a warning symbol, it's like a triangle. It just means that something on the screen isn't merely incorrect, but it actually means that the student might have misunderstood the question itself. So I've seen warnings come up like when the student is supposed to be putting in maybe a number answer, but they're trying to write a sentence. That could give a warning or something that they're misunderstanding the question. I think the most common symbol that you're going to see within Desmos activities are the dots. And that means that it needs human interpretation. The students are writing responses. They are, again, playing around with mathematical ideas. And so we're going to need to interpret what they're saying or what they drew in order to give them some feedback. Okay, so that is what the dot means. Across the top right-hand corner, we haven't talked about this side yet, you'll see we have 4 different tabs here. We will come back to snapshots. I promise we will talk about that in just a couple minutes. But we have our summary tab, which we just went through, which is our main teacher dashboard. Then we have a teacher tab and a student tab. So let's just briefly take a quick look at each of those. So in the teacher tab, this is where I see my student responses. Okay, so if I look between the screens, I can see what are students saying. Okay, what are the responses that we are getting for an activity? That is the teacher tab. If you want to show students a preview of what they're about to do before they do it, which we did a few times, that's your student tab here. So for example, I showed you before you started the card sort how to connect the pieces. Okay, you do that with the student tab. So this is the way to show, this is exactly what it's going to look like on your screen so we can talk about it. Especially depending, I know we had a wide range of what grade levels people teach when they wrote in the chat at the beginning of the webinar. If you have younger students, you're definitely going to want to show them the student screen preview at certain times to make sure they understand how to do the activity. And so that is the different tabs across the top here. The snapshot tab allows us to highlight several student responses without looking at the whole group, which especially in a participant audience of 86 people, you know, there's just too many responses for us to take a look at. So what I did while you were working, and some of you might have seen me if you were looking at the Zoom screen, okay, but you know, I have all these responses. Again, there could be 80 of them. And it's just too much to have a conversation about. So as a teacher, we need to look at our activity as a whole. We can't talk about every single screen. We just don't have enough time within the class. So we're going to preemptively select a few screens that we really want to talk about. Okay. So let's say I really felt like it's really like, this is the end of my scaled activity. I need to know if the students know, how do you know if something's a scaled copy or not? Okay, so as the students are working and their responses are coming in, I'm going to go ahead and check off this little box next to their names. And I'm going to just, honestly, I'm looking for about 4 responses here. Okay, so what I did was I just, you know, we're looking for the idea that it's the same shape, just a different size, maybe that smaller, bigger. Okay, so when I click that little box, this is creating a snapshot. So I'm just going to go ahead and quickly choose a couple of these. Obviously, if I was teaching a class and we had more time, I would know exactly what I was looking for, and I would put a little bit more time and effort possibly into choosing these. But I'm just going to choose a couple different responses, and I can then show those to you all as a whole. Okay. So here we go. And as you see, they've compiled these snapshots over here to the right-hand side, and I have a couple choices here. So I can present all 4 of these right now, or I could click the little arrow and say save album to snapshot. So I'm going to do that for just a moment. Let's pretend class ended, the bell rang, and you want to start class tomorrow with going over this screen. Then you can do that. The students have left your room. You can choose those 4 options that you want to talk about, save that to an album, so it will be there tomorrow. So now how do I find that? Okay, I'm going to go back up to the top, and you'll see that I have next to where it says snapshots, it says 4. All right, and this will be there, and now I can start class by looking, let's look at these 4 responses. If I want, I can add a question here. Okay, I could say, what do you notice about these responses? Again, I could put any question there. I also don't have to put a question there. I can just have a conversation with students. We can talk about vocabulary that we see here and make sure that we have a clear definition of what it means to be a scaled copy. So that is the snapshot tool. I also used it for screen 5 because the stories that people tell are always so fascinating and unique. So I just chose a couple of these responses, okay, and I showed them to you. So I'm just choosing 4 random ones right now, but it wasn't saved in my snapshots because I didn't save it. I just presented it. So it really is that quick if you want to do it in the middle of class, that you just choose up to 4 responses and you can project them. If you want to do more than that, then you would just go back and you can choose 4 new responses. The snapshot tool is also very heavily connected to our written feedback tool, which you might have noticed over here on the right-hand side. I can present it, but if you scroll down with your eyes a little bit, down here it says send feedback to 4 students. Okay, so if I wanted to tell all of these students something, maybe, or let's say now I'm like, oh, I just want to tell this one student something, because it sounds like they talked a little bit about the beginning of the journey, but what about the middle and the end? So maybe I want to send feedback to this one student. So I say, what happened during the rest of the turtle's journey? So I can send that to the student, feedback sent. Right now it has a little, it'll show me that I sent feedback because there's a little green triangle in the upper corner. And when that student sees that feedback on their screen, okay, then it will turn gray. And so I'll know that they have viewed that feedback. All right, so that is the written feedback tool. I can see a question in the chat and I can quickly show this again. So it said, can you repeat how you asked a question about the saved snapshots the next day? Absolutely. So when I showed that one, I was thinking, oh, screen 9 is so important if this was the activity, because the whole point of our lesson is to make sure that we understand how we know if something is a scaled copy. So the class ends and I want to start class the next day with it. So I'm going to choose up to 4 responses. Okay. And then I'm going to, let me just choose a couple more. Okay, again, I'm looking for responses that really talk about how the shape and the angles maybe stay the same, but that the size is different or whatnot. So now they show up on my right-hand side, and instead of presenting it immediately, I'm going to go over and click the right arrow, and I'm going to say save album to snapshots. That allows me to how to access it the next day. Okay, so then tomorrow, I'm just going to go back to my teacher dashboard, and then I'm going to click snapshots. Okay, and you can see that they are over here. I have the original one I showed you all, and now I have an additional one, and I'm ready to just present that to my class the next day. All right. All right, so that was a little bit about the dashboard. I want to now just really briefly show you how to find activities. So you're going to want to open, you can just watch for now, but if you were trying to do this without me, then you're going to go to teacher.desmos.com. So I want to make that clear. We have 2 sites. When you log in as a student, students go to student.desmos.com. And that's what you all did today when you joined the activity. So you were at student.desmos.com. But when you want to find an activity as a teacher, you want to go to teacher.desmos.com. Okay. I definitely recommend making sure you're logged in. That way, whatever you find, you can save and access later. All right, so there's a couple things you can look at our featured collections. There's always some featured collections right here on the main screen. If you want to view all of the featured collections, then right over here, there's a view all button. And you can see that some activities have been correlated into these collections. And you can look for one that might be a topic that's something that you're teaching. So if you're teaching linear functions, here are 10 activities that Desmos has identified would be awesome for teaching linear functions. And they've also been broken into various sections, like describing lines, writing equations, and so on. So when you're here, again, you can play around and look at the various activities. Maybe you say, land the plane, what is that about? So if you want to check it out right now, you're on the activity homepage, okay? And my recommendation is if you want to know whether an activity will work for your class, then what you're going to want to do is go through the practice screens. And so you can actually open up the screens right here, okay? And you can actually work through and play with the activity and see what happens as you go. And then you can determine whether or not this is the right activity for the class. Matt, can you just confirm, can you see my screen that I'm showing right now?
Yeah, it seems like the main full screen for me.
Okay. Okay, I just saw a comment in the chat about that. I just wanted to make sure. Thank you for checking. All right, so you can use that screen preview to see if the activity is going to fit for your class. And let's say you love it. You definitely want to use this activity with your students. Then there's a couple things I would recommend doing. One is I would open up the teacher guide. There's a teacher guide for every activity. It creates a really nice PDF. I don't know, I know we're very into technology, but if you're like me, you also like to print something that you can take notes on and really plan out your lesson, and then also maybe save in a binder for next year. So this is that guide. So when you're on that homepage, just click teacher guide. It opens up this PDF. It gives you some helpful activity checklists. You can put your learning target for your activity. And this is my favorite part of it, because this is where I try to anticipate and plan out where am I going to pause the class? Where am I going to pace it? Now, of course, I want to be flexible in the moment, but I try to have a general sense at the beginning. And this is where I do that. I might like put brackets around the first pacing to show where I'm going to do that. And then you also have some teacher moves that go with each screen. And if there's a student response, you'll see those here. So I definitely recommend printing this or opening it in a new window. That way you can reference it throughout the lesson if needed. The second thing you have to do is actually assign it to one of your classes. So about in the middle of the screen here, you see this green rectangle that says assign. You have a couple choices. The first choice where it says assign to your classes, this is if you have set up a Google Classroom that you've connected it with. We're not going to get too far into that today, but if you do have a Google Classroom, you can set up some classrooms that are connected and just do that. If you are like me and you aren't using Google Classroom, you're going to go ahead and choose single session code. And you can choose, do you want the code to be active for 48 hours, 2 weeks, or 1 year? Okay, so totally up to you. I'll do 2 weeks for this one, or 48 hours. Let's do 48 hours because we're not actually going to do this activity, but I can say create invite code. And you'll see this is the code for my activity. And let's say today is, I think it's Tuesday. We're going to do the activity tomorrow in class. Then tomorrow when I log in, okay, I'll show you what that looks like. So again, let's say tomorrow I come into class. I go to teacher.desmos.com. I'm logged in and I want to go to my activity because we're about to start class. Under your stuff on the left-hand side, it says dashboard history. And you can see that first activity is land the plane. And I'm going to open up my dashboard. This is where I'm going to be, and this is where I'm going to live, because I want to see where my students finally come and log in, and all their work is going to be on this screen. Okay, and then I can either project the code for the students to join as they come in, or if you do have a website like a Google Classroom or a Canvas page or Schoology, whatever you use, you can copy this link and paste it for your students to have really quick access to. Okay. So I think that's kind of it. A couple other things back on the Desmos homepage that I didn't mention. So if you love Land the Plane, one other thing I just want to show you, but let's say you're not ready, this isn't the lesson you're teaching right now, you want to save it for later in the school year, then what you can do is click the little plus sign over here and add it to a collection. I think of a collection as like a folder. So if I say new collection, you can give it a name, maybe use this for Algebra 1, or maybe this is for grade 8 math, and I can create that collection. And now I've kind of tagged it as grade 8 math. That way, when I go to collections, okay, it will be there for later. So if you work on a team, you might want to make collections for Unit 1, Unit 2, Unit 3, and so on, whatever your method of organization is. But I did want to show you how you can save. So we found our first activity by just looking at the featured collections, but you also can search. So if you're teaching systems of equations, okay, you can definitely type that in and see what comes up and what activities you might be interested in trying. All right, so we're running out of time a little bit, so I want to go back and just show you a few helpful resources in case you're looking for more information after the webinar today. We have a website that is help.desmos.com that I think is unbelievable. There are really short videos that show you how to do just about anything within Activity Builder and the calculator and much more. So if you ever get stuck and you want to check out a quick tutorial, Like for example, there's a less than 1 minute video that shows you how to use the written feedback tool. So if you forget how to do that 2 weeks from now, just go to help.desmos.com and you can find that video and it will show you how to do that. You can always email support@desmos.com. And if you are on Facebook, there is a Desmos educators group and people are always asking great questions and sharing activities. And it's a really awesome place to be. Before we dive into our final Q&A time, I want to let you know that your feedback is really important to us and we do make changes to webinars and to activities based on feedback we get. So if you want to take a couple minutes, you can go to bit.ly/ and you can see it on the screen there. It is survey-intro-activities and let us know what you think. If you don't have time to fill out the survey right now, a link will be emailed to you, but I'll give you a couple minutes to do this, and then we will open it up to the questions that we haven't had a chance to answer yet. And Matt just posted a link in the chat to directly to the survey, so that will be easier to access. Jennifer asked a good question in the chat. She said, what's the next webinar I should sign up for that follows this one? Honestly, I think that's up to you. I think there's 2 that I would suggest, but it all depends on what your goals are. We offer webinars about how to build activities. Now, some people never build their own activities. They use the pre-built activities always. So I don't know if you're interested in that, but you could look for a building activity one. But then there's also occasionally webinars that we do that dive even more into the dashboard features. There's one that really talks about that snapshot tool and the feedback tool. So we only briefly touched upon it today. But if you want to learn more about that, I'd say that would be another webinar to look at. And it looks like we have a dashboard deep dive on February 16th. So that's awesome. So I know some people in the chat are saying that they have to head out. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. We are going to stay on though. We're going to stay on for probably 4 to 5 more minutes and answer any lingering questions that we haven't got to yet. So please put those in the chat. Matt, are there any that I've missed that you think we should talk about out loud?
Sorry, I was wondering if you could say a little bit more about, someone asked about like 504 IEP accommodations and things like that. So I shared some of the accessibility options for Desmos, but I wondered if you might know a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what I could possibly show for that. I'm not too familiar as well. I know the curriculum definitely itself has a lot of features. I do know a lot of the activities here, they definitely are mainly only accessible on laptops, but I think Jill was mentioning that the person might have asked about, was it text to speech? Jill, is that right?
Yes, they were asking about that.
Okay. Do you know of any activity or anything where I could show that within the activity, do you think? That would come quick, maybe? Let me go back to land the plane and see if they're. I'm sorry, I'm not sure right now what might be a good activity to show where that would come up. Let me see if I can find one. I'm not sure who asked the question. We're gonna look for an activity. I don't think the text-to-speech shows up in all of the activities on the site. I do know that it does appear within the curriculum options. I know some people have been asking us questions in the Q&A, but I thought this was a good question that maybe others in the group would be interested in seeing. So someone did just ask, once you make a collection, if you have team members, can you share that collection with them? And the answer is yes, you can. So I just made that quick collection. It only has one activity in it, but let's say I wanted to share it with you all. I would just click the 3 little dots. And I can edit it. I can add it to my sidebar over there, or I can say share the collection. So I'd get this link and I could share that with any of my team members. Awesome.
Heather, someone asked about your banner. I don't actually know how I don't have that banner, so I don't know how you got it with like the algebra and on the previous slide.
Oh, like all those tabs across, is that?
Yeah.
Like the distance learning, the linear functions, that one, Matt, is that? So those are some of these activities. Well, let me go back. I think I forgot what screen I was on. I'll try to go back in a second, but you can see it kind of on this one too. So Jill just shared, she did a search for screen reader. That was very smart, Jill. Thank you so much. And you can see that these are all ones that were tagged with having that option. So whoever asked that question can also just type search screen reader and you can take a look at all of these activities that would have those features there. Oh, the math 8 algebra, is that what the person meant? So for the collections, I just added that collection. I think that's what the person means. Oh, the pretty pictures on the top.
It's like on your main page where you like log in. It says math 6 to 8, and then that.
Okay. That is because that I do have access to the Desmos curriculum, and so anyone with that has those pretty pictures. Gotcha. Thank you. All right. It is the end of our hour together today. So I do want to thank you for taking your time with us. I know there's a lot to learn about Desmos activities, and I hope that you feel comfortable to go forward and give it a try in your classroom. And definitely let us know if you're on Facebook or Twitter how it goes if you do. So thank you so much, everyone. I hope you have a good rest of your day.